Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to The Reason We Learn on this Sunday evening, October 10th. I've got a shocking show for you this evening. I have Sloan Rachmuth back on the channel because she's got some updates. You are going to want to hear this. Please take a moment and share this video, like this video, get this out to people who would be interested in understanding more about social emotional learning. This is vital information. And while you're doing that, while you're smashing the like button and getting everybody corralled to get on this channel so they don't miss a thing, I also want to let you know that if you're interested in this topic and you want to follow along and not miss anything, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a video, and also consider joining my locals community at thereasonwelearn.locals.com because I will be sharing other things and articles and updates, stuff from Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, I try to get it over there so you don't miss out. These are all ways that you can stay up to date on what is happening in education in America. So, with that said, also you can follow and you should follow Sloan on Twitter. She's at Sloan Rachmuth, and I'm going to give you that right now. Hold on. So you can follow her on Twitter so you don't miss anything if you're not on Twitter. I really encourage you to check out edfirstnc.org. Now, it does say North Carolina, but that does not mean it's exclusively North Carolina focus. Is that correct, Sloan?
Correct.
Fair to say? So they're covering things nationally. Okay. It's just that, as she's about to tell us, North Carolina is the epicenter of some things. We're like a test site. So I'm going to turn this over now to Sloan, and she is going to shock you. Get ready. Okay. Go for it.
Shocking Sloan.
Here you go.
That's what they call me. Yeah. So thanks for having me on again. I really
Thanks
appreciate
for coming. You're doing us a favor.
Well, I don't know. You may think otherwise in a few minutes, but yeah, I mean, Deb, as you're saying, we have 27 chapters around the country, including 2 in California, and in North Carolina, we are the most progressive, the most far advanced educational system in the country, and that's very surprising to everyone in North Carolina because we've had, Republican leadership in both houses, and in the lieutenant governor's office. Not now. Mark Robinson's wonderful, but the previous, how many years has it been? It's been at least 12 years, something like that. Okay. And so, all along we've been hearing, in the past, oh, we're doing great. We're making great strides, et cetera. And lo and behold, we have the most progressive system in several ways. So we're going to talk first of all about Panorama, and it's not Glanorama or Bananarama. Unfortunately, I wish it were, but Panorama we've been hearing about, with good reason. I mean, we blew the whistle on Panorama May 30th in North Carolina. We were one of the first states to do it. And here's what we did. We put a petition together statewide that says, defund Panorama. May 30th, June 1st, the entire bookcase collapses on me personally and Education First Alliance. The superintendent came after us, called us vile liars and basically attention whores, tried to discredit us. We began getting a stalker, lawsuits, threatened for arrest, everything. And now we know that it probably has something to do with us trying to defund Panorama and that we were successful. So let me tell you about Panorama Education. The way we positioned it, Deb, is a child spying program.
It's fair. It's a fair statement.
Yeah. I mean, it's got, the surveys are extremely probing. Everything from a depression survey, which nobody deserves to know that about children. This is the government surveying your children. Also, this is the government vis-a-vis Panorama going into your living room and manipulating your 10-year-old child basically to tell them everything that mommy and daddy does. It's a complete crock. North Carolina is unique in this way. North Carolina was the first state to trial Panorama surveys in 2013. And again, this is party agnostic, people. This just is. 2013, we did a pilot here. 2016, the state was going to roll out Panorama surveys in a lot of the schools. Democrat liberal superintendents weighed in and said, hey, wait a minute, not going to happen. We take exception to surveys asking personal questions and asking questions about students to weigh in on teachers here. And then I believe
It's okay to ask about mom and dad and is there a gun in the house, but don't ask questions about the teacher quality.
Yeah. And what age you developed pubic hair and started having sex? Because this is what, this is what a lot of these surveys do. I'm not kidding you. We have, and to our credit, we put a little bit of the brakes on surveys here in North Carolina. We're one of only 9 states in the country to be giving these bi-yearly surveys that ask the questions to middle schoolers. Hey, how often do you do heroin? What's the age at which you lost your virginity? How many hours a day are you left at home by yourselves? Oh, yeah. So these are very invasive. And again, it's the government who has no damn business doing that. So Panorama got its start here, okay, had received objections in 2016, including by the now deputy superintendent under Catherine Truitt. The deputy superintendent said, hey, let's not give these. And now we're asking kids everything under the sun. What changed? That's usually either it's political or it's money or both. But now they're being given
probably here. Both at this point. And of course, it should be noted that homeschool children do not have to take these surveys. Just so you know, a little sales pitch there for homeschooling.
Yet, Deb, yet.
Well, I think coming to my house with this garbage and I
won't go there. The castle doctrine, baby.
Yeah. So, but Sloan, are students who are old enough to say no? Are they permitted to say no? Are they permitted to say, I'm not filling this out?
I'm glad you asked, Deb. It's almost like you queued me up. Let me tell you, the horrific thing about Panorama is that we have multiple problems with what you're talking about. So under federal law, any money that goes, federally to enact these surveys, which it does here with Panorama, you have to let the parents know and you have to let kids opt out. So we've got many complaints of parents not being told that the surveys are being given. We have a couple of the complaints that are outrageous, one of which, and this family's considering legal action, in Pitt County, a father called and said, hey, listen, I hear that you're giving these surveys tomorrow. Don't want my daughter to do it. Principal says, hey, whatever, man, cool. That's your option. The next day, the little girl was called into the principal's office and coerced into taking that survey. This is a Panorama survey. So this is going around parental consent completely and federal law, might I add.
Not to mention probably traumatizing the child.
The child has had problems being withdrawn and showing symptoms of PTSD since that, because there have been several via SEL, multiple questionnaires since then. And this is going on all over the state, all over the country. And kids are afraid. Well, they feel like they're under glass, quite frankly, and they're being monitored and they're in the right. They feel this. Kids know this.
And so, and of course, what about little kids? Okay, so you've got kids who are not reading, so they can't really read the survey to answer Panorama surveys. How old do they start with this stuff?
I've heard as early as 5th grade, but let me tell you what they're doing with children in 4th grade, for example, in North Carolina and other places through SEL. So SEL is social emotional learning. And I want you to, let me give you a segue here. So without surveys, social emotional learning would collapse because continuous data feeds are critical and requisite for social emotional learning to actually happen. And so what's happening in social emotional learning, to your point, in 3rd grade, in 4th grade, when kids aren't cognizant of what a survey is, kids also are not cognizant of what boundaries are and what privacy is, because they want to be a good student. They've been taught by their parents to comply. So these children are writing autobiographies or being given exercises that ask them, what are your parents like? What kind of relationship do you have? And if I may, can I share my screen with you to show you?
Please.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you to show you. This is actually a middle school a middle school assignment, but it's really instructive here, Deb, because this is being done really in all areas. So I'm going to show you. Let's see. I've got this in the bottom. Can you cue this up here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So this is a typical SEL lesson. You'll see it's a continuous self-examination exercise. Something my friends do that worries me. What is their name, by the way? My mother's name is, and what kind of relationship do you have? Again, though this happens to be middle school, we are seeing exercises just like this in 3rd and 4th grade.
This is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't even. And then also, what I want people watching this to understand, and one of our commenters here, Lonely Wolf, says, and it sort of explains what I'm about to say. The first lesson that should be taught is that not everybody wants to hear your life story, but it's now actively being taught. So the flip side, not only is the government surveying your kid and then storing the data and selling the data, but your child is learning a lesson about divulging feelings, about the value of feelings, and about how much everyone is or should be interested in those feelings, when reality out there in the world is, no, when I asked you how your day is going, I really didn't want an hour long spiel about every last little feeling that you have and why you have it, and my not having time to listen to that or even wanting to listen to it doesn't mean I've injured you. I have
Right.
not just traumatized you because I didn't validate all the little feelings that you shared with me. I have to go to work now. You know what I mean? So when you're seeing young people who not only don't manage their emotions, like they claim this will help with emotional management. No, the first thing you learn about managing your emotions is when and where to feel them. And in the middle of a classroom amongst your peers is probably not the place you want to be doing, all this performative feeling. They're learning a lesson about this that is the opposite of what it ought to be. They're breeding sociopaths.
Yeah.
And people who are just like, it's not good.
No, it's not good, but this is another way that they're collecting the data. And so in North Carolina, we've even had school districts that Panorama has come in, not only paid for the survey, but paid for 2 years worth of employees to analyze that data and extrapolate it. And they had something called in my summation, it was a PI, which is a primary investigator. And that is something that you have in a clinical trial. So, North Carolina has been the guinea pig. And this has been obviously now extrapolated all along the country. Let me give you an idea of what we're talking about. 10% of school districts have Panorama in them. Okay. So that's not a lot, but they're overrepresented here in North Carolina. And that's why we're exploring perhaps the first lawsuit against Panorama to come out of North Carolina.
Right. Well, that's good. But what do you think are the implications of, for example, the Attorney General's letter threatening parents who've been complaining about things like this?
Yeah. So,
for those who don't know, who are watching, if you haven't heard, the National School Boards Association sent a letter to the Biden administration that was really quickly responded to because it probably was planned in advance. And there's an investigation ongoing because a whistleblower said that it was. And the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has a son-in-law who is the co-founder of Panorama Ed. And it just isn't that convenient and coincidental that he's sort of saying, we're going to send the FBI out to all these districts to start an investigation into what parents are complaining about against the parents, when his son-in-law stands to profit in a big way from one of the things parents are complaining most vociferously about.
Well, again, back to North Carolina, what's more coincidental is that September 28th, our Republican superintendent, Catherine Truitt, sends out a letter accusing, it's actually almost a replica of the complaints that the DOJ made. September 28th, she sends out the letter along with a state Board of Ed chair that says, hey, parents, stop being violent, blah, 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 without one one scintilla of evidence. Moreover, she has been the first one to send parents to their local school board to complain about critical race theory, SEL, and Panorama surveys because she claims that the state has nothing to do with it, which is a bold-faced lie. September 29th, the National School Board Association, that's the date which they sent the letter. So her letter, their letter predates that. Again, Panorama has a stronghold in North Carolina. It just goes to show there is some sort of collusion here, right? Because we've been raising hell at Panorama. We've been damn good at that job. Parents all across the state have demanded it be defunded. And I'm telling you, if it's defunded here in North Carolina, Panorama has lost maybe even half of their revenue. We don't know, but we're putting a dent in it. So because we're so effective, and again, this has nothing to do with party, guys. This has to do with a color, and the color is green.
Yep. Well, and it's green in terms of the money, but there's also a power component. If you want to silence your political enemies, if you want to make it really difficult for them to get their message out, to get to contradict anything you're saying, if you want your narrative to dominate all the way down to this, getting kids when they're 6 and weeding out and changing the thoughts of independent thinkers. If your goal ultimately is, subservient little go along to get along serfs and or activists who are supportive of your cause. So you might even be satisfied with, we're not going to get all activists, but we need to at least control the ones who are not going to, actively support our cause. We need to make sure they're marginalized, minimized, subdued, etc., and that anybody who might fight against us won't have the capacity to do it. Well, one way you can do that is get a hold of their kids.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, people approached Hitler and said, hey, what are you doing? You're going to lose the elections. He goes, what difference does that make? I have your kids. You know what I mean? I mean, this is, everything's Hitler to the left, but I mean, there's a true analog here.
That's actually accurate. That is what happened.
Yeah.
Because one of the first things he changed that people don't realize in 1938, one of the first major institutions that he took over 100% was education.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're looking at is a Mao type of program. Mao had something called the Four Olds. And what he did was sought to extinguish the old cultures, old beliefs, old habits. I think there's one more other thing. I think it's religion, but to sanitize that. That's exactly what's happening. What's happening. So I'm going to go, Deb, and tell you that what's behind this. In other words, critical race theory, a lot of people have been appropriately worried about that. That we know is just a tool. Critical race theory is a tool. It's a part of a bigger movement. And I'm going to show you a schematic that will get that out. So the end game, and not really the end game, it's actually here, is medicalizing this. In other words, you will comply or your child will be medicated with what? A variety of things. Puberty blockers we've seen, antipsychotics we've seen, benzodiazepines. But that is the end game here. It's here in North Carolina. So I'm going to show you again a schematic for all of your for all of our people here. I'm going to show you something called, and this is, by the way, this is not only in North Carolina. This is in, I think, and I want to be very clear in our reporting, which we'll do this week, about 12 other states. This is called the MTSS Framework, Multi-Tiered Support System. It involves Panorama. It involves SEL, period. So you will see here in the upper left, screening. That's an absolute must. You will see without screening, this whole thing falls down. This is Panorama surveys and others. Down here, you see culturally responsive. That means critical race theory. So that CRT is connected to something called a prevention system. So it's for your school safety, right? And then monitoring the progress, right? What progress and to who and who's evaluating this. But this flows in, and I'll show you, into putting psychiatric staff into every single school. Let me tell you how that works. And this is, by the way, this is a schematic for that. It's integrated, evidence-based, which is BS, etc. So here's how this works. Your children are going to be screened in Panorama, and they're going to tell you, hey, it's screening to see that everything's okay and keep everybody safe. They're being screened for a psychiatric diagnosis. The teachers are doing the screening. The teachers are doing the diagnosing. Believe it or not, the teachers doing clinical diagnosing. Then we've got psychiatrists, or children have access to psychiatrists via Zoom inside of the schools. Now, in California, first of all, sounds horrific, and it is. California, the age that children can get psychiatric treatment without parental consent is 12. North Carolina, it's 0. So you can have 5th graders, 3rd graders, 2nd graders who the teacher will refer to an outside source, whatever, or inside, and they have qualified immunity, Deb. This means they cannot be sued for malpractice. This means wrongthink is what they're looking for. Deb, this is a system that relies not on outward behavior, like not paying attention, falling asleep in class, whatever. It relies on the contents of a child's mind, attitudes, beliefs. So that's why you need the screening, you guys, because it's relying on what's on the inside. And these programs say, if you don't get enough children who are LGBTQ or who need psychiatric help, continually test them. That's what they're doing. Right, because if it were outward behavior, Deb, you wouldn't have to screen. If it were outward behavior, and in fact, if the endpoint of SEL and the endpoint of screening is behavior, we'd have no objections, but it's not, because the beginning point isn't behavior. If the beginning point is a behavior, it sure as hell isn't the endpoint. So what is it? This is unconstitutional. This is human rights abuse on a major scale. And I want to tell you something we never talked about. Social emotional learning, fundamentally, it seeks to change the genders of children involved. Period. This medical program, and I'm getting ready to show you, and it is a medical program. It is predicated on critical race theory. It is incentivized by changing the gender.
What do you think is their end game? Like, why?
I don't know, but I'm sure, to your point, back in the 1930s, no one knew what the endpoint was for Hitler. No one knew what the endpoint was for Mao. You know, you can theorize, but what we do have is we have concrete proof of what's going on, and you know what? That's going to have to be enough. Let me show you. I'm showing you the data collection slide, so we can see this. And I hope it's big enough for you guys. If it's not, I'm going to try to blow it up for you. Okay. Whoops.
Oops, sorry. I hit it twice by accident.
Okay. So just shows you, to what extent did your school use best practices to disaggregate mental health services and support data to examine student outcomes based on various demographic characteristics, not based on behavior or academic performance. Again, behavior and academic performance, that is outside of the mind and the conscience of a person, which, I mean, the First Amendment starts there. We have to at least have the freedom of thought and conscience. This program in North Carolina, supported by both sides of the aisle, does not.
So what is there? Okay. When I'm assuming that somebody like Truitt has been asked, why do you support this program? What is the positive outcome you expect to see from this massive investment of our taxpayer dollars and these intrusive questions into our children's and our lives? Justify it. And what do they say?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, this started before her.
Whatever they said. What was the justification?
Well, I can tell you what she has said. She has said, parents, if you don't like Castle SEL, stop looking at the website.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Stop looking at the website. Let me tell you, for the last several months.
If you don't like being overweight, just don't get on the scale. There's all better.
That's what I do.
No, but I mean, it's like if you're for health, like, you're obese and it's impacting your health. When you go to the doctor a month later and say, I solved my problem. I stopped looking at this scale. It's all better now.
Yeah, I did the scale out the window and I ripped the seams out of all my jeans. Big deal. My ass is showing in the back, but hey, who's the wiser? Yeah, exactly. But what Catherine Truitt spent time on doing, and I'll speak to her about her. She spent several months calling us liars. Liars and fame whores, and that we were, get this, paid Marxists to infiltrate. So that was
what?
Yeah. So the first,
projection much, Ms. Truitt?
Yeah. Until we came fighting back, and I'm talking about fighting back with lawyers. So until we came fighting back and fighting back with ethics. I mean, look, her own right-hand man, who I must mention was in the Dan Forest administration, his wife is a lobbyist for these psychiatric programs. He's making money off of this. So he was doing that while Dan Forest was in office. I'm not blaming anyone for anything, but I'm telling you the material fact. Ad hominem attacks towards the people who are bringing the news. That was what they first did. Now they're going into, hey, this can prevent the next school shooter. That's BS. Again.
What a crock.
Yeah.
No, in fact, I would argue the opposite is true.
I think you're right.
Because
look at the medicine. Look at those medicines.
Yeah. Not only that, if you look at these kids, it's a combination of a kind of a nihilism. They believe in nothing. They have no hope for anything. And they feel like, on the one hand, they've been told, like, for a certain portion of their lives, you're special, you're perfect, you're amazing, you're wonderful, great inflation, trophies for everybody, blah, blah, blah. You hit middle school, which is about where things start to go off the rails, and you start getting bullied, or things start happening. And now, of course, we've empowered bullies with CRT. So now we're giving them more weapons to use to bully each other. You microaggress. You're a bully. You're a misogynist. You're an evil oppressor. You're a bad person. And are you going to be really surprised when the next school shooter shows up because he's sick and tired of being called names and thrown to the side and told he's a bad person? Or worse, people trying to feminize him right out of existence.
Exactly. Well, what we have now is, look, and this is something that's universally abhorred and reviled and opposed by gay people alike. We have a lot of gay couples who have children in our coalition. They definitely do not want this age inappropriate crap being peddled on their children. Black families damn sure don't. White families, it is a universal. It is inappropriate. If they were trying to take gay teenagers and trying to coerce them into being heterosexual, it would equally be inappropriate. And in fact, no one's sexuality it should be the topic of conversation. And why in the hell is the government? The government is trying to change the gender of our children. Why the hell is that going on? That should be the question.
Yeah. I have so many questions. I mean, like, for starters, why is anyone still sending their child into this? Because they don't know, right? I mean, would you say that it's just not enough people know? So everybody watching this, there are 30 people right now who are watching this. There need to be 300 people. And I'm not saying that to toot my horn or even Sloan's. We need, if you know somebody, not just in North Carolina, but certainly and especially in North Carolina, if you know somebody with a child in school under the age of 10, okay, basically below fifth grade and below, where they're likely, as Sloan said, going to be either bullied or coerced or suggested into answering questions that someone else is going to write down because they're not answering it themselves. You have got to get this information to them, because these parents need to make a decision. They can't make a good decision for their children if they don't know what's going on. And then after that, I guess it's up to them. But they're right now, if they're taking their kids to school, it's probably because they just don't know. And
Yeah.
kids above that, you need to get with your kids and you need to tell them what's going on. They can't answer these questions.
Well, I have a couple of things to say. First of all, it begins in kindergarten. Second of all, I mean, the parents don't know, and they've been told so much crap by the left. But I also, even if, listen to me, we talked about this before. Even if we do believe that we would never have our kid in schools or whatever, I mean, this is a matter of gross human rights abuse at the hands of our own government, and we in this country, we do not allow that. We do not sit back where our government does that. Just as loud as we've been, castigating the government, and quite appropriately for Afghanistan, and the mass human rights abuses that under our government we're allowing because of the way we pulled out. Just the same as that, right in our own backyard, we have no right to complain about that unless we're going to fight this. This is right underneath our nose. I mean, this is the government using medication to propagate groupthink.
Now, can they give the kids the medication without the parents' consent?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're going to be giving benzos to children without the parents' knowledge or consent?
Yeah. I mean, the way the statute is written, to be clear, is that treatment for mental health issues, treatment. So treatment can mean—
These people are not clinicians.
No,
they're not clinicians.
Well, to be fair, in the state of North Carolina, as it is everywhere, a doctor would have to prescribe that. But again, if you've got via Zoom these woke clinicians who are writing the initial script, I mean, the question becomes, who is able to medicate them in school?
Well, you know what? I'll go with that, because I had a child in a medical situation. It was this medical psychological situation, and I was shocked at how easy it was. And I'm not saying I wanted this or did this, but I was pressured. And then the clinician, because of COVID and everything, was meeting with my daughter over Zoom. All right. And she was, 14 years old. So they said, you shouldn't be in the sessions all the time. It's important for her to have her privacy, to be in the sessions. And next thing I know, I'm like, go pick up your prescription at this, pharmacy. And I'm like, oh, for what? And I had to do my own research, looking at the bottles and researching this. And I got on with the clinician one day. I said, this appointment I'm coming to. And he said to her, I said, I want her off these medications. And I want to know, what is the process for weaning off? She spent the entire session trying to talk me out of that. I did all my research, and I'm like, I know what this is doing to my child. And I see what it's doing to her. And you're destroying my child before my very eyes. And she's coming off of this. And I'm going on record right now that you dare. You're not having another session with my kid. So I know from personal experience how easy with it. When I was actually seeking treatment for my kid, how they go and they treat, but then they go, okay, we're going to send medicine. Go have your mommy pick it up.
Hey, look,
my 14-year-old kid.
The schools have made themselves an arbiter of the medical, gatekeeping. So I'm going to tell you this, guys. The schools have been saying for the last 15 months, got to wear a mask or can't come in. Listen and hear me clearly. Soon they're going to be saying your kid needs these drugs or they can't come in because they've been diagnosed with whatever. So again, the government will diagnose.
We're afraid of your kid if they're not medicated.
100%. That it's here. It's not coming. It's here. It is here.
Why would you dehumanize your own child like that? This is like...
It's like Sophie's Choice, in other words. I mean, it's really getting to be that point. I mean, if you get, not to dramatize it, but if you're a working mom, let's say a single mom, you have 4 kids, these things happen, right? You're a widow, you're whatever. And it can happen. And yet you're divorced, whatever it is. And you have to have the schools. It's your only way out. And you have to medicate your child with a, potentially, I don't know, life-altering drug so that they can get to school. Believe me when I tell you, this is here. It's here. It's not a month from now. It's here. And I'm telling you, we in this state got here with Republicans, air quote, in charge. And again, that's what the reason why I'm saying this is not to call out Republicans, because they were duped, some of them along the way, I'm sure. But, either we have to get Republicans in here or Democrat or whoever, politicians who are more cognizant of reading these bills right, before they come up. Or else, there's a lot of Democrats that we're talking to, and I normally don't talk about politics, but I'm tired of people saying it's only one party. That's why I'm just tired of it. We're talking with Democrats, people who have been blamed for, this, that, or the other, who are very concerned because they do not like the policing of children of color. I'm telling you, this is the ultimate police state. In fact, in Palm Beach County, there's now a lawsuit, which I actually agree with. Since this program I'm telling you about was deployed there, Black children disproportionately are getting sent away for 72-hour holds, being taken away in handcuffs in the back of cop cars, because instead of disciplining them or working with them, they're being told they have a mental disorder. This is inappropriate. Yes, this
Are
is
we
happening.
like in Victorian England now, where we're just going to institutionalize people
This is happening. This
who
is
are
happening.
reacting rationally to a completely irrational situation?
Well, I mean, children are wearing a mask. How the hell can you tell if they're? I mean, it isn't. These surveys, Deb, they don't go into why a children is upset, and that it's because they're wearing a freaking mask. You can't tell what their emotions are, right? It's because their school's been closed. We don't know why, but they're being sent away. This is happening. It is here. It is here. And do not think, guys, if you live in a state, well, I trust my lawmakers, maybe they haven't done their homework. You need to look for Project Aware or Project Awake. Do it now at your state level, right now. Project Aware or Project Awake. Deb, I'm going to tell you another thing that's very disturbing. In North Carolina, and I think maybe 19 other states, CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, CASEL, S-E-L, has been inserted into all 12 academic standards in North Carolina. It means math. You're looking at those stupid surveys. Here's why that's important. When you make SEL a part of the state curriculum, a parent can't sue over that.
What's Project Aware, Castle, and Project what?
Project Aware, Project Awake is the medicalizing element we've been talking about, the psychiatric element we've been talking about. In North Carolina, it was in 3 counties. Now they're rolling out to other counties and all over the state. Now, switching gears to CASEL SEL, which works with this also. In other words, if we can't get you to answer all these questions correctly, Deb, then we're going to put you on some medication. That's the staging, the screening, the curriculum. If that don't work, the medication. Got it? All right. So CASEL SEL in North Carolina is in all 12 academic standards, because a parent cannot sue if something is a part of the curriculum. If something's part of the curriculum, by the way, you know what's part of the curriculum, Deb? Surveys, diaries, all that. So now they're trying to make it so you can't sue over it. But guess what? We're going to try to do it anyway. That's why they did it. Because look, if it's a specialty program, you can sue over that, right? You can opt out of that. Can't opt out. Very clever. Had we known a year ago, we could have stopped it. Well, let me change that. Had we known before June 2020 in North Carolina, we could have stopped it.
So what do we do now? I know you have another show.
I
right?
do. Well, there's 2 ways to
Okay.
handle these things. There's legislation and litigation.
Okay.
So legislation, that ship sailed. In fact, Tim Moore, who is in North Carolina, head of the House, he did not bring up the bill that would have banned puberty blockers for 18-year-olds and younger. So had we had that, we would be less in jeopardy. So, what we're asking is any and all parents who have had children damaged by this or who have been damaged by this, you have got to get a hold of us. We have lawyers. We have a legal team. We are looking to protect your civil rights. We have to protect your civil rights because it's very clear. Legislators at this juncture, they ain't going to do it. The superintendent, we know whose side she's on. It's not ours. It's not children. and they're there to make a buck. So we want any and all folks. I mean, you know, you need to let us know. We've been targeted. We'll continue to be targeted. I mean, that's, you know, once you get punched in the face once, it becomes easier. So, you know, let it be us. We've had both sides go after us. We're sure that it will continue. But this is about our children. And so, you know, the options are, there are no options. It's you literally charge the cockpit at this point. You know what I mean? You charge and you protect and you know, fight like it's Flight 93 in a way, because that's kind of where we are, is that you've got progressives that are in a proverbial plane that are trying to crash us, and we have no option. And I want everybody to hear me and understand what I mean. I mean, right now you're seeing it. You're seeing every single institution being completely corrupt and the signals being jammed. And we have the biggest overreach in American history with the FBI, with federal resources being put to local issues to come after parents who have done nothing. So we are the tip of the spear here. And we don't mind being the tip of the spear, and bring it.
Yeah. So individual parents, what can they do? While, I mean, you guys are doing amazing work and pushing hard for where you can. And so individual parents would get this information out to everybody they possibly can if they have a school age child. And, you know, if you can get your kids out, get them out. Obviously, that's the best protection, is homeschool, some other kind of school that you can vet that isn't doing this, where, you know, they're not required to do it or whatever. But it's better if it's a school that's not doing it at all, because that at least means that they understand that academics are what they're there to do, not to diagnose and treat your child with imaginary ailments they don't have yet. Let me rephrase that. Give your child ailments that they will then diagnose and medicate because, you know, big pharma or whatever their reasoning. I don't know. We don't really know, and nor do I really care.
Yeah,
I'm past the point of really caring why they're doing it. They're doing it. It needs to stop.
Period.
But if we can't make them stop doing it from inside the system, then we need to protect these kids. We need to get them out.
100%. Yeah, 100%. We are for every solution, including fighting, removing, suing, whatever it takes. Or just want to mention that if you're in Orange County or within a 50-mile radius, Orange County, Hillsborough, North Carolina, we ask you tomorrow to please join us from 5:30 until 6:30. We have a rally outside of the Orange County School Board, and it's to remove pornographic books from the library. We have detected 8 school districts in North Carolina so far that have, you know, gay pornography.
Right.
If it were heterosexual pornography, I'd point that out too.
Now, you mentioned, I just want to clarify for people, because you said that there litigation and legislation are ways to fight this at your end, not at the parent, down at the parent level. But I mean, well, the parents can sue. If you have a child who's damaged, you have evidence, there are people looking for plaintiffs, right? Sloan, you're looking. Okay. So that the litigation, you didn't say litigation won't work. I think you said legislation that ship has sailed.
I think the ship has sailed temporarily. I think we really need a TRO on these dangerous practices. But I would also encourage, even if you've got a kindergartner, do not answer any of these questions. You have to, if they absolutely must go to school, yeah, I would do that. I would do that. I would educate the heck out of your kid and tell them you cannot answer a survey. If they ask you anything about home, if they ask you anything about your religion, I mean, they're asking, you know, are you Jewish? And, you know, it depends on where you go to school. Some people are uncomfortable with people knowing that, or Muslim or whatever it is. I mean, or what is your sexuality? Or if anyone's trying to talk to you about your private parts. That's happening in kindergarten.
Is there a grassroots effort to either send people out in neighborhoods where their kids enroll in school to like go literally door to door and hand people information? Are we doing mailing campaigns? Okay. So these things are happening.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we are. Contact us. We believe the best way is to knock on the door and show these pornographic pictures to residents and say, hey, Do you like looking at this? No, you want to punch me in the face? Okay, good. Well, excuse me, ma'am. These are being shown to our children.
Right.
The best way, look, the proof is in the pudding. We have the evidence. It's time to show the rank and file people what this is all about. No one approves of this stuff. No one.
Right. No, this is pretty widespread. Whether parents are upset and going to school board meetings because they don't like the medical tyranny of,
Yeah.
the masks and other things, whether they don't like the fact that the kids aren't learning and they're not teaching them academic subjects, they're dumbing down the curriculum, or
Yep.
they don't like all of the CRT and the racial essentialism and the Marxism in the curriculum and all that. But to me, this supersedes like all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Most of us would be like, I'll get into the performance art of wearing the mask if you're teaching me an academically rigorous, subject matter curriculum, then you're not invading my private space. Otherwise, like most of us would hate it, but we wouldn't be as upset as we are about this is the
This is red
above it
alert.
all, everything.
This is red alert.
It is big red alert. It's predatory behavior, and your child is being mined, the data mining that's going on, and also their mind is being like warped and manipulated. It's like a psyops experiment. It's gross. Someday in the distant future, I hope they'll be writing about this with the equivalent disdain as Dr. Mengele.
Yeah.
But we're just not there yet.
Well, hopefully we won't take on the catastrophic deaths and destruction as a result of it. And again, I'll end it with this. Every time I go out and I speak to crowds, I say, how many of you, if we went back in time, how many of you would fight to stop Hitler? Everyone raises their hand. Second question I ask is, okay, how many hours a day would you spend on that? And they're all universally, a day, I'd quit my job to do it. Well, great. All we're asking you is for an hour a day to help on this mission, because that's where we are. You have been transported back in time, and you have the opportunity to perhaps stop the next Holocaust, because these actions are prelude to some genocide. We've seen it time after time after time again. We're here.
Yep. Nobody wants to believe it. They're like, oh, that can't happen again. Like, how do you think it happened in the first place?
Correct.
If people were properly taught their history, they would know that he didn't just arrive one day and grab a bullhorn and say, everybody into the cattle car. This happened over a period of years, plural. And initially it seemed good to people. It's like, we're going to give you a job and we're going to watch your kids from birth. We're going to take your kids and put them in this daycare program and put them in this, and it's going to be wholesome and wonderful. And we're going to do everything so you can go to work and finally earn a living. And then we're going to do this. And then we're going to do that. And next thing you know, can I have my kids back? No, sorry. We've got it. You go do as you're told. And it was too late. So like people embrace things thinking, oh, this is good or helpful or whatever. And they cover it up with, this is good for your child. This is good for your child. And they only change the mask. They only drop the mask when you finally say, I don't believe you. I see the results and it's not good. And they're like, you will comply.
Correct.
But they won't tell you that until you finally step up. Well, we saw it last week. Merrick Garland did the you will comply. It was just in the form of a letter saying he's going to use the full power of the FBI to threaten parents. And his son-in-law is a co-founder of Panorama Ed.
Yep.
So that's what that letter was.
Yep. And we've seen it here in North Carolina too.
Well, Sloan, thank you so much for coming back and doing this quick share of all this stuff. I know you've got to go. Please go and watch Sloan's upcoming show. Where can they go find that? Yeah.
10 minutes.
Where can they find it? On Twitter?
Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
Okay. So, and that's at Ed First NC. Okay.
Education First Alliance.
NC.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. On YouTube. So she's going to do another show. She's going to have Nicole on, right? Nicole Solis.
That's right.
All right. So you're going to want to go from here straight over to there and go watch that show. Thank you so much. I appreciate you stopping by. All right.
You.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.